management, especially for you people that have private locations, lake management. Most states on your public lakes, they have biologists to come out. They'll shock the lakes. They'll get an idea of what's in there, and they'll set rules and regulations and numbers per species you can take home. And there's a reason why they do that, is to keep that lake healthy. I can't tell you how many times I have seen, especially on Fish Brain and some other places, people get attacked for keeping a bass or get questioned on something that the person that's questioning it don't know what state they're in or understand state laws, regulations, and managing fish. This is one of them deals that really irritates me. There's, do I want to take a bunch of fish home and eat them? No. But from time to time, I like to keep some. I might keep fish maybe 3 or 4 times in a year, and it's usually enough to feed me for 1 meal, 2 at most, and I can eat them before I freeze them. I don't want to freeze it. I want my fish fresh. But you got to ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish out of this body of water? All right. A small body of water can't hold as many fish as a large body of water. So small and large may mean something different to each of you. But here, some of the places I fish, I can very easily walk around the location in just a matter of minutes. So that location is not going to hold the amount of fish where I like to put my kayak or my boating. It's a huge difference. So here, bluegill bed 4 to 5 times a year. 4 to 5 times a year. You just got to let that sink in and understand that's a lot of bedding and a lot of eggs and a lot of population coming into the water. So a lot more of those are going to survive than just say bedding bass. But if you don't control the bass, and the bass have plenty of bluegill to eat, the bass can get out of hand too. So you got to set your goals on what you want. The state's going to take care of their lake. So quit judging people that keep fish out of a state lake, because it's really healthy as long as they're within the guidelines. Now, if they're keeping illegal fish, tear them up. That ain't right. It needs to be legal. But you better make sure before you question them, you know where they're fishing, the state they're in, and you know the rules. Because if you attack somebody, you don't know what you're talking about. You just make yourself look like an idiot. But anyway, here I have a couple locations that I help the owners let them know what to do, when to do it. Right? We've had one location that had just some of the biggest bass, just fine, and they killed all their vegetation, which in turn took away any area for bait fish to hide and be able to retreat. So it left them sitting ducks. Okay. So as the populations increase, the bass numbers increase, and they eat all the bait fish. And then as soon as the spawn comes and the fry gets going, there's no chance for survival, so all the fry gets eaten. Well, the pond, over a couple years, and we kept trying to tell the owner he needs to get something in there, or it's not going to be the same. Well, last year and the year before, you could see it decline. The big bass were dying out, disappearing, and you could go down there and catch nothing but fish. They didn't even weigh a pound, and some of those fish might have been 3 or 4 years old. So there was no management there. There was nothing for the bait fish. His bluegill disappeared because the bass were eating everything. They were hungry. So now he's got a situation where there's a new owner now, and hopefully he'll take care of the location. I haven't been out there since the new owner got it. I hadn't talked to him, but I think we have access to it, but I just hadn't had time. But anyway. so many fish out of a body of water. They recommend, and you might can get an idea, there may be some kind of table on the internet in your state, because of the different temperatures can affect how often they spawn. But like here, like even a small pond, you got to take several hundreds of pounds of bluegill out a year to keep the numbers right. You got to take so many bass, and I recommend small bass. Don't take out your 2-pound or better bass unless they just start getting real thick. Now, if you're catching 2 and 3 pounders like no problem on anything, then you may have an issue there. But a healthy lake, you just shouldn't be able to just go in there and just rip them out of the water. And you ought to have to work for it just a little bit. So before you trip out over what somebody's doing, make sure you know what's going on. And make sure you know where they're at and the rules. Heck, it could be somebody posting fish out of their own location. I mean, if they built a pond and bought the fish and put them in there, I mean, there's no rules other than what they want to do. Private people in Mississippi can set their own regulations. So it ain't like going to a state lake. But every state lake in my area, every one of them have a different slot limit for every fish. So, but typically bluegill runs about 100 a day per person, and which is nearly impossible to do, especially on a state lake. And a lot of state lakes, the crappie can run anywhere from 25 per person to where I've seen it up to 75 per person, to try to get the numbers back right before it gets out of hand. If you let that location get out of hand, it will turn over, and Mother Nature will take that lake and correct the amount of fish that can survive in it. And what I'm saying is, your big fish fixing to die. So, understand what you're talking about. Don't get mad at somebody if they kept some bass to try to manage an area. Because baked bass, macaroni and cheese really ain't bad. If you go to a seafood restaurant, you eat grouper or snapper or something like that, it's the same texture of meat. Now, if you're catching them off a golf course where chemicals are poured into that pond, I probably wouldn't eat it. But typically, anything you cook, you get them temperatures up right, it's going to make it healthy. So you'll just have to know what chemicals are there and then decide. You got to manage an area just like deer. If you're a deer hunter and you want big deer and you ain't taking out a certain number of does, you're screwing yourself. You ain't gonna have them. You may have a few visiting bucks come through, and if you're lucky enough to see them, because in an area that's overloaded with does, the does will go find the buck a lot of times rather than the buck come to them. So know your area, get a feel for what you got in your location, and make a decision on what you're gonna do, and make that location healthy where you can grow some big fish. If you ain't got bait fish and your numbers ain't right, go get you some shiners, shad, put something in there. Try to get the heavy predator fish to slow down on eating some of the fish you're trying to grow, because they will eat them out and then they will turn around and eat themselves out. So stop judging, work for a better location,